Hey everybody, I'm Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today is another day of grateful art where I'm going to show you step by step in watercolor how to paint this adorable bird. This is a very beginner friendly live video art class. So if you've been wanting to learn how to do watercolor, this is really great. The whole vibe of this class is going to be very relaxing and very chill. The week is really about just putting our attention and focus on other things. On the mic is my husband, John. And he is going to help me do all of this fabulous work. I'm getting to all the little different locations. I see Christine Smith and Irene and Alex 3 Eclipse today. I saw that some people weren't aware that I even teach watercolor. So this might be a surprise for you. If you didn't know that, I have many watercolor lessons. Yeah. But they may have been kind of on the down low. You weren't aware of it. This is a great first introduction. Talk a little bit about materials. It really isn't going to be crucial what watercolor you use. If you just have Crayola, that is okay. We have ways to work around for that. I've got some examples. I've got some core watercolor. I've got some of the Viva color sheets from Inktober. I am going to be using the Sennelier little 12 color watercolor pad. It's got yellow here. It looks orange, but it's actually yellow. I'm just very messy. I'm going to have a pencil, a nice number 8 round watercolor brush, and I'm going to be painting on 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. Now, all this information is in the description, but I just like to cover it just in case you like to hear it as well as see it. Also know that after the show, I'm going to be doing chapters so that you can get back to specific steps much more easily. I did that for our first day, and everybody really liked it.
Okay.
So here he is. I'm going to put him aside as my reference.
All right.
Right here, so I know what I'm painting. That's a very important thing. This is tomorrow's watercolor painting. And we had to move yesterday's to Sunday because we had a snowstorm and a tree blew down, and then we didn't have any power. That was new.
It was, that was a little surprise.
So all you got to do is check the playlist. You can get notifications. John, can you throw up the notification information?
Oh, yeah, I can. Hold on just a second.
All right. So if you'd like to be notified by us via text, we have not an unlimited number of notifications, but we do try to text you guys every time we're live. So if you're in the contiguous United States, you should be able to get that text. Also, you can check the calendar on the website, and then I just try to put as much information out on social media as I can. So if you're following me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, there should be updates and reminders plus events. Yeah. Now, I'm going to be free-handing in Mr. Bird. Guess what, though? I don't expect brand new painters to draw. Those are two different skills, painting skill and drawing skill, though they are beautifully related and work together in a lovely, lovely way. And I do recommend learning both. I don't think it should be a barrier to learning how to paint. So there is a traceable on the website. It should be, there should be a link in the description. Should be a link. Now, I'm supposed to be, I see Thelma Smith saying hi to John and Mods, and I see Colleen is in the house, and Jenny is from Kansas, and I see that our Facebook family is also coming here, so we got everybody showing up. Let's start out by drawing the bird. Now, John.
Draw the bird.
John is going to be, he's going to struggle a little bit with this part. And it's because I'm going to have to do this really light. When you're sketching in on your watercolor paper, and you'll notice that I'm painting on Fabriano. If you want to know the exact one, you can find other paper. I'm just letting you know what I'm painting on today. This is a 9x12, right? 300 gram, 140-pound paper, cold press. You could also use smooth press if you want hot press. That'd be okay. I do recommend using watercolor paper 140-pound. This is a block, which means all of the pages are glued together so that the paper doesn't buckle and wrinkle as much. It's just a helpful thing, and you can find those in different price points. Arches, if you see arches, you'll be like, oh my gosh, that's $80. No, don't. That's not your watercolor pad. You want to look for, you know, the Fabriano, you want to look for the Strathmore, you want to look for Canson, you want to look for something a little more in budget. All right, I'm going to start out with the beat, and I am going to sketch this in super, super, super lightly. So we'll just start here, and this is going to be where John attempts to see that. Now, I like to bring the little angle of the beak down. I think it's always good if you are learning to draw things, look at your reference and try not to think of what the object, beak, 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 beak. You're thinking curved inward line is, but only be present to what the line is doing. So you're not the line that joins the first inner line. That's what you're wanting to do. And looking at that and placement of things so that when you go to draw that in, right, you can see that really well. Now, John's going to dim the light for just a second so you can see these lines as they go in. Now, on the outer side of his little bird head, I'm actually not going to come at the apex of the beak, but I'm going to come out a little bit to the right. And you come up a little bit on his head, and then it scoops back like this. And that's how you get the beginning of his little head in. Remember to bring the line coming in from his cheek, not again from this downward point of the beak, but out. And then I'm going to kind of give him a fluffy belly. It's good to have a fluffy bird. It's not good for birds to be fluffy, but in art it is. In real life, they don't like it. And you can see that sometimes I just sort of tap the pencil. I'm just making lines as a guide. I'm not trying to draw this in. And your pencil lines can show in your art.
I have a question.
Okay. If you have questions, put them all in caps. We won't think you're yelling.
What kind of pencil are you using?
Oh, I love this. I'm very happy to share this with you.
Hold on.
This is a graphite aquarelle pencil by Watercolor in 4B. You can get these. These are water-soluble pencils. They are drawing pencils that work like watercolors. Pretty cool, right?
Pretty cool.
2-in-1. And you know me, not in my hair products do I like a 2-in-1, but I guess I do like a 2-in-1 because I have that shampoo that colors my hair.
You've been a fan
2-in-1 girl.
Multi-tools for a while.
Lilu Dallas Multipass. Chicken good. Rahil says, can I do another cat's tongue giveaway? My wallet's running thin. Yeah, I'll put another one up.
We can do that.
We can do that. If you guys would like another giveaway, we can do a giveaway. Shelly says, this is really pretty. She loves it, but can she use multimedia paper for watercolor? You can. It may buckle a little bit. So you just have to use a lighter water when you're using a multimedia paper.
Or tape it down.
Taping it down does help. Taping it down can help. Now I'm going to bring a little tail out, and it'll curve up a bit. I love the wing. The wing kind of, the head comes down, and there's a bump, right, for all the feathers in the wing, and then these feathers will come out. A little orange in. And then I like to bring these out. I really love to do his wings and feathers. I really like to do birds, to be really honest. I think watercolor birds are the most fun because they get on little flowers, and they themselves are like flowers. So they're very relaxing to paint. I'm also going to make some markings about his coloring. So I'm going to come along here, and you'll notice that his black marking comes under his chin and then back on his head. We have this here. And there's also going to be an area that's going to remain white on the wing. These are some white feathers that are tipped there. It's important to his markings. It probably helps him hide from predators. And we're going to come in, and there's a little bit of a gray at the back of the belly. Now, his feet and the branch. My advice is, when you're trying to draw a bird's legs, I like to start with at least the length of the leg before I even put in a branch. And the reason for that is it's really easy to put the branch in an awkward position in relationship to him, especially if you're new to drawing. So sometimes if you pick an object that you need to keep a certain length or aspect ratio, if you do that first, it'll prevent you from encroaching with another object in your drawing. So let's come here, and I'm going to bring his first leg in. There's a bit of a bend. Birds have very fine legs. I'm going to make this, and I'll even give you kind of an idea of how long I make his little leg. And I'm going to start the bend of his little foot. Their little foot's bend a lot. They're really delicate little bits. So this right here, this little leg length that I'm kind of estimating is about just a titch over an inch, and it's about 2.5 centimeters. So in relationship to him, I'm just trying to make sure that there is a nice little delicate leg. And I want to make sure also bird bones. Think about it when people are like, it's got delicate little bird bone. Well, you got to give him delicate little bird bones if you want him to feel like a bird. Now I'm going to come here and you can see I'm bending this leg a little bit more. I'm coming in to grab another part of, say, a twig that he's perched on. And I'm going to curve in on his little claw, leaving room for him to grip a branch. You know, we've given him a little room for a branch. And it's real easy for me to draw that little twig coming through for the flower. Okay, now I've got him perched.
So,
thank you for the hearts, guys. I appreciate the thumbs up and the hearts and the follows so much. Thank you.
Yeah, guys, thank you.
And for the stars and the super chats and all of it, we are really grateful. Grateful for all the things.
Yes.
I almost spilled coffee all over my drawing.
The question that I can't get articulated out is, when you're doing watercolor, do you do the traceable the same way? Ceril paper, the transfer process?
I like to use graphite pencil instead of ceril paper.
Why is that?
The reason is that ceril paper can be so pigmented and powerful. It is for art, but it just can be a lot. I would never use darker than yellow. You know what I'm saying? Can you go up? There's a question about Canson paper curling.
Oh, yeah. Go back up here.
All right. So Ali says, I use Canson 140 pound paper. Good choice, but it still folds up at the edges. I've heard some say to prevent this, we have to brush water on the other side of the paper too. Is this true? So what they're really talking about is pre-stretching your paper. The reason your watercolor paper buckles is because the fibers of the paper expand at different rates as they get wet, right? And then as they dry, they also kind of dry at different rates. So pre-stretching, which is getting kind of a thorough soaking the paper through, or counter stretching, like going on the back or taping edges down or soaking the sink and then taping them out, are all countermeasures to doing that. That particular technique, I would say, use only either with some very good examples that you're following along, or experiment with it, but don't do it on like a piece that like you're giving to a friend that weekend. Play with those different techniques in your paper, because they all have, paper all has a different personality. And what I have found is one stretching process does not work universally across all paper. You've got to kind of have a couple little skills in there. And this is a crazy bit of advice, but sometimes I press my paper flat after a painting and between two heavy things like a leaf and a book.
That's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Kathy wants to know, can she do this with a watercolor pencil? And I'd like to say, yes, you can, Kathy. Beautifully. There was another question. Will I get your autograph too? Well, when we give away artwork, I guess people technically get my autograph, don't they?
Vicky was just like, how do I best flatten the watercolor?
Yeah, if you can't pre-stretch it and you don't have it on a block where it will stretch back out flat, I do like to put it between, I have two, because I do a lot of quilting and other things, so I have weights that I can put my papers between that are very even, so I can press them flat and I leave them like a leaf, and then they're fine. I've seen one where people actually iron the paper, but I'm going to talk to some experts before I ever recommend that.
Yeah.
It seems attractive as an idea, but I'm dubious as to its efficacy. Let's draw a little bit of a twig here. The thing about your twig when you're drawing twigs is you don't want to draw pitchforks, right? Which is, let me draw on the back of this right here. Pitchfork is when your twig comes up like this, and then it's got two twigs coming out like that.
Yeah.
Try to avoid pitchfork. What you're going to want to do is have nice little bends in your twig. And then below joints in different places, you want to put other little branches. See how we do those?
I do.
So that's just more of our philosophy when we're doing that. Go longer than you think you should. A lot of times people just really shorten up their flowers and things. It's just nice to give a couple little stems and things. I like to put my birds on interesting botanicals. Not that I'm like a member of the Audubon Society or anything. I just really enjoy it. The last thing I'll sketch in is his eye, and I'll talk about it a little bit. So here's the corner of his beak. I'm going to bring the eye back here. Very gentle upward curve. Come down the opposite side. There you go. Trying to get him a nice little eye and his little bird head, because that's what he wants. Now, your watercolor. I'm painting with a brush that has hair that needs to be primed. If your brush isn't synthetic, even sometimes when it is, you want to have it in the water for a second. And the reason you want that is you want all the hair in your brush to swell and go to capacity. If you've ever washed your hair in the shower, you know how sometimes like your hair will swell and do things. You want that in your watercolor brush. It'll help it perform better. It will help it hold the paint better. It will help it release the paint better. So you don't want to go from dry to that. I see Lihiru Sandeep is from Sri Lanka. And Joan Bennett says, where's your traceable? Okay, the traceable should be in a link at the top of the description if you're having trouble seeing that. If you ever go by my website, there's a traceable page and you open it up and it has a search feature so you can search through, I don't know, the 1,000 traceables that we have, because we have a few. So now that I've gotten this a little bit wet, I'm going to do a thing. I'm going to come in here and we're going to start on his belly. So I'm going to pre-dampen his belly. And the reason I'm pre-dampening that is because I want all the watercolor in here to be soft and delicate. Very diffused, not hard-edged. Just very, very soft. Just come in there. I want this paper to be, and I don't know, can you show that? Do we need to bring the value back up or, okay, I think you're seeing it. See that little bit of sheen? You want it to have sheen, but you don't want it to look like a lake. Avoid the lake.
Avoid the lake.
Now I'm going to pull some of my yellow out. Obviously,
All right,
sometimes I paint right in the pan and I get my yellow kind of a little bit messy, so I'll clean it out some and I'll mix on my paper palette over here.
Sorry.
You don't have to mix on your paper palette, you just can. I'm going to put a little bit of this yellow in. It's tinted with a bit of my red over here. And what I'm going to say is the exact colors are here. They're enlisted, but what I want you to look for on your palette is look for a bright yellow and look for a red that reminds you of fire or a sunset. It's in art, we refer to that as a warm red. You don't have to have my exact red. You just want a red that looks a bit like a fiery sunset. And can you see here where I'm painting how the edges and everything are super soft? Right? We want that. And that it's not going anywhere on the paper. While it is softly blending all through the area that I pre-wet, it's not going anywhere that I didn't. Bring some of these little feathers down to help push that little leg back. And I like to add some fluffy little feathers. And again, bird people, I know sometimes when birds make these little fluffy feathers, it means they're super unhappy or cold. But I like it in the watercolor because it makes them pretty. So we're going to say he's just he's doing a pre-fluff right before he's back down to his like happy little bird state. I'm going to get a little more of the red on my palette that looks like a warm sunny red. As you can see, I've got a pinkish red, a blood colored red, and a sun fiery red. If you're painting on Crayola, you should have at least one, potentially two reds. On almost any set, they'll give you a cool red and a warm red. Crayola's pretty savvy, actually. Those Artist Loft and some of the other paints. I'm taking this darker value and I am adding it to the bottom of the belly. This belly. A little bit darker, isn't it? A little bit more orangey. We like that. The rest of it's a little peachy. Now, know something about your watercolor. Good watercolor, not great watercolor. It is going to do a thing called color shift. And that means that it's going to lighten as it dries. Oops, just don't tell my artwork on the floor. Bravo me. Bravo me. I'm putting out a paper towel. It can really help you in your watercolor to have a paper towel because it allows you to wipe off your brush and notice if there's excess paint on there that you don't want when you're trying to rinse out, because your brush will really hold color. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick my darker green on my palette. So pick your dark green on your palette. And I'm going to kind of start coming up the stems on the toe of my brush. Can you see how delicate that is?
Yeah.
through his little claws. Come over here.
Sure that
Same thing, a little bit green. Now we're going to come back with some brown.
this.
And the reason we're doing this is so that we can give the stem some multi-tonal effect. So as soon as I'm done with the green, I'll come back with my brown that looks like a, there's a deep brown here that looks like the dark part of wood, and this is kind of a fiery brown. It's much warmer and more red. We call that burnt sienna. But on your palette, it might be called something else. As long as you know what you're looking for, though, you can absolutely use what you have. I do recommend buying great watercolors. I just recognize that if you just stumbled in on this lesson, you may be rummaging around in the drawer of your house and grabbing your kids' watercolors and paper going, I think I'm going to do this today. You know, I just want you to know how you could do it no matter what you're using. We're just using that. I might come here and blend the brown and green a bit. Just come back with a little bit of the green, kind of creating a little transitional space. The other thing that I might do is it's okay to pull out a little bit of leaves. You know what we're doing? Now give your stem a little bit of personality. That's all right. Okay, give it leaves. It might have them. Now the flowers, if you're a painter who struggles to paint loose, the flowers can be a really good exercise. And my advice to you is be relaxed about your flowers. This is not about painting some perfect flower. This is about capturing a feeling of the flowers. I'm going to come up here. This is my ultramarine blue. You want to use your blue that has a little bit of a red hue to it almost. My other blue is Phthalo blue. It has a bit of a turquoise value to it. And I want to use the blue that has a little bit of a red hue. And the reason I want that one is because I'm going to use purple and I want them to blend. I'm going to come out here and you can see on the toe of my brush, I make a very random little shape. I'm going to come here and make another little random shape. So I press the brush down. I haven't painted like something like, ooh, it's so crazy. It's very simple. Now I'm rinsing out. I'm going to grab a little of my purple. And I come back making a random shape. So I pull that one out. These are like loose little petals. And the flowers just find themselves. They do. And come back with some blue if I want to. This is a very delicate, crepey little flower. I love looking at desert flowers because they have some really interesting blooms.
Very pretty.
Yeah. And the shapes are so, oh, I'm going to be a little flower now. Okay, just pull that brush stroke down. Come over and pull a little brush stroke into it. And then what I'm doing that might be hard for you to do is go, okay, done. Right? Okay, done. Let's see how we're doing on Facebook. I see so many people have dropped us and they're loving. I see Tracy is saying hi. And then I say, Shelly asked, what kind of brush do I need? This particular one is a very popular brush in watercolor. This is a Ruby Satin by Silver Brush Limited. It's a very popular brush in watercolor.
Is that the one that I recovered for you that you were like, where'd it go?
Maybe, yeah.
Is that the one that mysteriously appeared on your table and you were celebrating?
Yeah, sometimes I if you see me switch tools, sometimes it's not that I have switched anything, I just lost whatever I have. Use my backup tools. I'm adding a little bit of loose watercolor. The other thing that makes these flowers work, grabbing a little bit right off of the pan, is that I'm working wet into wet, which means the purple, as I blend it in, goes into the already wet spot on the paper, and the two colors merge together and create these very delicate little, beautiful, beautiful little shapes. Maybe add a little bit of a flower right there. You really can't, it feels like you can get these things wrong, but I have to tell you, you really don't. There we go. That's a little group of flowers. Isn't that lovely? And you know what those flowers gave us time for? They gave us time for the paper up top to dry. And then I saw something. Rhonda says, "Hi, I'm from Northern Ireland. I rarely get to see any live shows because of the time difference. So delighted to be here. Good news for you guys over the pond and over the sea and around the world. I am moving a lot of the shows to 1 p.m. because I get tired at night and I feel like I'm a better teacher in the afternoon."
She runs out of juice.
I do. I feel like I'm a better teacher in the afternoon. Let's get into our gray. Now, many watercolor palettes have either a black or Payne's gray. I really like Payne's gray. It has a slight blue cast to it, which is rather nice. And I'm going to get a very light mix of it. And I know my mix is light, right? Because I have a lot of water in my brush and I didn't pick up a lot of pigment. And I'm going to come to his beak very carefully on the toe. I'll leave a little bit of white there. When I first paint him in, it's a very, very light gray. Okay to leave little spots of white because remember, in watercolor, we don't have white paint. The paper is our white color. So we have to use less pigment, which means more water on the brush and a less heavy load. And then we build up as we go. I'm going to come delicately around here. Now, it's okay that some of his beak will blend in because initially there's some similar values. Come around the eye very carefully. Now, watch this. I'm going to come onto my paper towel and I take out the extra water. And then I come back with my brush and I suck up extra pigment that I want not to be so dark. See how we do that?
Yeah.
So it's just maybe a process you didn't know about. If you've never seen it, you might not know about it. Now I'm going to come in and get some more very dark pigment. And I'm going to come under his chin. Definitely at the bow of the front of his face, in front of the beak, up over the eye. Just making this a nice dark value. You can see we built up the value. From here, and you can always pull out little delicate feathers. And you can also blend a little bit there, you know, saying, oh, hey, another place that it's nice, I'm going to come here, make sure that my pigment load is not too dark. Let's paint in some delicate little legs while we're at it.
Yeah.
Delicate little legs. Less is more with bird feet. You want to make sure that you've got the feet hanging around the branch.
I've got this question here from Aria?
Okay. I'm going to come back and lighten while you ask the question. Right here.
Era, maybe?
Okay.
So she says, can you paint a backlighting painting next time? She's having a hard time seeing and understanding how to paint something that's well backlit.
Oh, a backlit one. Yes, I can. I can do a future backlit. If you want something to look at right now, and I don't know if the mods can find it, but there is a girl who's flinging her hair back that I have, and she is completely backlit, and the water is backlit, and everything is lit around her. She's a really good example of that.
Yeah, not blacklight, but backlit.
Backlit, yeah. I also have blacklight paintings, though, if you want that. So under his little bum, I'm going to come back with a light gray. This area is sort of a soft gray. Might as well put it down now. We'll make sure that just under the tail feathers, under his little tail feathers, right? Nice gray thing. You can bring the brush back into him. Soft gray. Soft, soft, soft. Another place that we'll definitely want some soft gray. And the gray is soft because I have less pigment, more water. That's why the gray is soft. We're just relaxing today and distracting ourselves and being happy. Patsy says these watercolor tutorials really encourage her to try watercolor. I am so glad. I would love to encourage you guys to do watercolor. Watercolor is a lot of fun. And I think it's just a terrific medium. So expressive and free. And once you get over the initial learning curve of it, it's really rather fun to do. I've just loaded up a pretty heavy pigment on the toe of my brush of the black hair.
Tina has such a good question.
Oh, ask that. I'm going to bring his little coloring forward a bit.
Can you fix mistakes in watercolor?
Yes. You can. And there's a variety of ways of doing it. You can lift a lot of color out of the paper, and there are lifting mediums as well. I think Golden watercolors from their core line, Golden Artist Colors line of Payne is core. I think they make the best lifting medium, like 5 miles. 5 miles. But yeah, you can do a lot to lift color back up out of your paper. Come here again, down, and we're going to just add a little focus, a little touch of dark. This part of the feathers. On the back of his wing. Stroking out, stroking. Just kind of give that directionality of perhaps little tucked up feathers. And then if you come back with a very dark load, because the edge of his wings definitely going to be a little bit darker. Get my brush wet, load up pretty hard again, and let's do the tail. Just pulling that tail out, dark color, making that up into his bird body. I come back with much more color. I'll maybe let the edges, the back tip of his tail feathers be just a little bit lighter. And that's I'll get that by just not painting it back. It's a subtle thing, but you'll love how that looks. And rinse off. And I'm going to pick the brown that is perhaps a little cooler. It's a little deep forest. I'm going to mix it with some gray. I'm going to come on the inside of this little eye right here. A little bit of this brown gray color. Leaving quite a lot of the eye, as you can see, still white. I'm going to load up with my dark gray. Come along the inside of the beak. Inside of the beak. And then I might come here on the outside here. The toe. Rinse out, softly pull color back, and we're going to remove some color. So I get my brush wet, and then I come back, and along the top edge, I tap along very gently. I'm tapping, and it removes a little smidge of color. It's a delicate, calm process. I think watercolor is very calming as a medium. A little bit of extra gray down here, but still leaving that dark value on the beak. Right, we want a nice little dark value on the beak. I'm going to come get some gray. Something to realize about watercolors. These are half pan watercolors. You can do this in the tube, But when watercolor is dry, it's still good. So all of your palette, all those colors, all those things that you mixed, everything you did is still good. If you didn't know. No, I don't have a backlighting watercolor tutorial yet. I just have the backlighting acrylic tutorial. And do I paint with oil? Go back up. Someone asked if I would paint with oil. Ali says, do you paint with oil now? I heard they take a very long time, so I didn't try because I knew I have no patience. I don't. I can. What I would say about oils are there's a lot of misinformation about oils out there. They're not toxic when you buy good quality materials. It is cheap, inexpensive materials that tend to be toxic if you get the proper materials. Honestly, some of them smell amazing. Like anything by Chelsea, Classical Studio, in oil painting, you can trust 1,000%. There are wonderful oils out there. The colors are incredible, but you're right. They do take a long time to dry. You've got to be an artist that has maybe 4 or 5 paintings going at once. You don't want to use accelerants because it can crack and craze. And you do definitely want to get into a class because they have a different thinking. Just a different thinking about them. I don't teach them. I'm watercolor and acrylic right now. I've got that gray on my brush. I'm going to come in. Now on the eye, it's going to be a very delicate bit of biz because you need to leave a little white reflection. So first it's quite light gray, and then I'm going to come back, with so much gray. And I'm going to tap that in the corner and let it blend back a little bit. And then if I have to, I will pick up somewhere needed. Now, if I completely lose the white dot on his eye, guess what I can use?
What can you use?
If for some reason you lose a color, a reflection, something that you needed, I really love these Jelly Rolls by Sakura. They are a highly pigmented pen. They go beautifully over any dark paper, and they work well over my watercolors. I really like them a lot. Come in here and just delicately, and maybe tip that a little bit darker and tip that a little bit darker. Ooh, I almost got into my coffee there. Add a little bit of extra shading on his little bum bum. Now on his chest, because this should be a little bit in shadow. It should be. I'm gonna get a nice. I think I'll use this nice darker brown. And I'm gonna come here and we're gonna add a glaze. Now in watercolor, we're either working wet into wet, so it's all flowing and soft, or we're working dry, or we're glazing, right? So areas that were dry are maybe like these little areas where we're just trying to get these little edges. But where we want to glaze is where we put a thin color over another color and allow the transparency of the watercolor to help us create the shading. See how we did there? I can come back with another little red. Just a bit here because I do want it to be soft. Just a little more. So we did glazing and now we're doing wet into wet right here. We glazed the brown and we added a little bit of the orange in a more wet aspect. Oh my goodness. Come back one last time. I'll come in with just a little bit of pure dark color. Front of the eye. Just to make sure that there is a little bit, because you should have a pretty nice dark eye. Now in watercolor, it's very important to remember that you want to let everything rest and sit. Because even when it appears dry, pigments are still pulling down into the paper. The color shift is still happening. There's a lot still going on. So allowing your paper to rest instead of work it is very important. You can always come back and glaze. You can always come back and reactivate a layer, but you can never get a rest back. The rest is precious. So when you're trying to see what the flowers will do and how they're going to paint together, when you want to see how the colors are going to soften, you're going to just need to give your paper 20, 30 minutes to really finally resolve all of the way. Now, if I didn't get to any questions, speaking of, Tammy Edwardson says, maybe this may be a stupid question. I really doubt that. Most questions are actually quite good. But is a jelly roll and gel pen the same but different brands, or is it something completely different? It is. Did
you see this one?
Gel pens are a knockoff of Jelly Roll. Jelly Roll is just much more pigmented.
If your Jelly Roll doesn't flow, do you have any suggestions?
Whenever anything pigmented that I have doesn't flow, rubbing alcohol loosens up acrylic paint. It cleans up a lot. Having 91% rubbing alcohol around your studio is a great idea. Having some in a stamp pad, a clean stamp pad. You don't want ink in the stamp pad. You want rubbing alcohol in the stamp pad. You can kind of draw over it. Is a good way to clean the ball. That's a weird thing that I do.
The pigment must flow.
The pigment must flow. But I always have, I know it's kind of hard to get now because of current situations, but I always have several bottles of 91% alcohol around because it'll loosen like a completely ruined brush. If you don't have Sherpa soap and you have 91% alcohol, you can get a completely ruined acrylic brush back. You can get paint off of surfaces without damaging most surfaces. You can loosen up pens. There's a lot you can do with it. It breaks down a lot of products. So good tool to have around when needed, as well as wet wipes. Also good tools. So I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. Let's sign this. Now I'm going to use a little smaller brush. I'm going to use, this is a number 2 Silver Silk 88 round. This is a synthetic brush line that's pretty popular with watercolor painters. And I'm going to get some purple.
It's just gone so quickly.
It did. This is like a very level surprise. 1 little painting, and I try to break up my watercolor lessons from, kind of level 1 to level 2. We don't really have too many 3s yet. Because what happens is like, since I've only really been bringing watercolor into my community hard, like intensely for under a year, I want to build up a group of artists that are looking for those more advanced lessons. So right now, I'd say most of our lessons are in the 1 and 2 range, 1 and 2. We will eventually get into these more advanced stuff. Michelle says, would you ever recommend matte finish spray to seal it? What would you recommend? So traditionally in watercolor, you would simply frame and matte behind glass. If you would want to use a good watercolor so it didn't fade, and you would use a good museum glass so it had UV protection. However, now there are finishes, varnishes for watercolor, and I have not completely explored them, but what I would say is Sennelier and Golden can be trusted. There are companies that can be trusted and companies that cannot be trusted. You can trust Daniel Smith. You can trust Golden Artist Colors. You can trust Sennelier. I can tell you who you can trust. You could probably trust Da Vinci. There are companies that you can trust. Not all companies can be trusted. So it's just good to just listen to the ones I recommend and see if there's something in your price point from one of them.
Generally speaking, what happens on the show is that we recommend, you'll hear us talk about products that we believe you as a consumer are going to have a good experience throughout. We get asked to review a lot of products. Some of them we review and just choose not to talk about on the show because we don't think it's the best thing. For example, if we didn't have a good experience, we're probably not going to pass it on to you. That's not to say, oh, okay, now you got to show them what you did.
Yeah, I just wanted them to see the little jelly roll pens so they understand what it does.
All right. You can't just jelly and go. And
I guess I could. I thought I could jelly and go. I just wanted to give them a little demo. So that's why I have my jelly pens.
All right.
Another, you could use liquid masking agent, but that's really challenging for beginners. That's a real level 3 product. And for me to even teach it, I have to have several pieces in different stages to demonstrate it. If I try to do it one and all, what ends up happening is I leave my frisket on too long, and then I have to make crazy videos about how hard old frisket is to remove. And who wants to do
frisket that? Boogers.
Tomorrow, what are we painting? Oh, I dropped them.
What'd you drop? Don't drop it.
All right, so tomorrow we are painting her. I would put her in a 1-2 range. I would say there are elements of her that are very level 1. right?
Let me zoom
Very,
out.
very level 1. And then there are elements of her that are level 2 in your skill set. But really, mostly overall, I found her to lean more to level 1, and I wanted something. I would say the fact that she's figurative would be the hardest thing about it. But the painting techniques on her are very chill. And then the next watercolor will be on Sunday. It was supposed to be yesterday's, but we had that. This is also a jelly roll pen. You could use white acrylic, by the way, as well. And then if you want the acrylic lesson, that was the first in the series. She's the first in the series in the acrylic.
Oh, yeah.
We have 4 acrylics this week and 3 watercolors. So I'm just giving you a lot to distract yourself with. And do distract yourself. Keep yourself well and happy and healthy. And don't put a lot of crazy into your mind right now. Self-care is so important in times of stress. I want you guys to be good to yourselves, good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.